Thanks for dropping in. This week's project started out as a simple holiday decoration, but it ended up as a fidget toy. These cute snowmen are surprisingly posable. The head can rotate 360 degrees, look up and down, and even tilt side to side. The waist is just as posable and can pivot nearly 60 degrees in every direction. Even the snazzy scarf can rotate independently from the rest of the parts. It might not be good enough for a limbo contest, but it's uncommonly flexible for a snow person. So how does all this articulation work? It's pretty simple really. The three body segments are connected by two simple ball joints, with the center segment acting as a socket for both ends. A flexible connector of some sort runs from the head segment directly to the bottom segment to pull the parts tightly together. The center segment and the scarf are only held in place by friction, so they can both turn around an infinite number of times. Since this is a 3D print, there's plenty of subtle roughness to the surface of the parts, and that helps hold all the poses in place. The snowman comes with a few customizations, although I wouldn't be surprised to see remixes in the future with even more options. The most obvious customization is the neck ornamentation. You can choose between a scarf or a rough woven collar. If you match the collar's collar with the middle section, you get a nice cozy looking sweater. There are also buttonholes that you can leave plain, or you can paint, or you can fill them with beads or these absurdly small 3D printed buttons. Depending on what you use to hold the segments together, you may need to print a version of the head and the bottom segments that have wider 4mm holes. If in doubt, just go ahead and print the wider hole versions. Finally, for even more articulation, there's an alternate middle segment with holes for pipe cleaner arms. For someone without a mouth or eyebrows, this snowman is surprisingly expressive. With only a few adjustments, he can be curious, sad, confused, guarded, or bashful. He's also fun to just fidget with, moving parts around mindlessly. If you get the rhythm right, you can even get the center section to rotate all the way around without even touching it. Okay, but how does it print? After all, spheres are notoriously difficult to 3D print, due to an extremely sharp overhang around the bottom. To get around this, I built the entire design around spheres that would be truncated, right where the overhang hits a more manageable 45-degree angle. Even the scarf, which jets off wildly into space, is completely printable without supports. If you choose to use 3D printed buttons and eyes instead of paint or beads, those will actually be the toughest parts to print. I went ahead and added brims to all these tiny parts, partly to help with bed adhesion, but also to find them more easily when they'd fall to the floor. You'll notice that the hat has a section for a color band. This was just a mid-print color change, but you could also just print the whole thing in one color and paint it. Okay, we've got the parts, so let's build a snowman. If you're going to paint or glue on any tiny parts, it's best to do that first. For the eyes, let's use some tiny beads. And then 3D printed gold buttons for the sweater. Next, we're going to thread all these segments together. There's a lot of options for what you use as the flexible connector. Some of my test prints use normal rubber bands. They're readily available and super inexpensive, so this is a pretty good option. Unfortunately, they'll probably break from rubber fatigue more quickly than the other options I've tried. So if you go this route, expect that you're going to have to reassemble your snowman every year or so. Some of the other prints use the 60mm diameter rubber O-rings. They're a lot snappier, and I suspect they'll last a lot longer. For this snowman, I'm going to use a regular old hairband. In terms of durability and cost, it's a good middle ground between the O-ring and the rubber band. Hairbands are a little thick though, so they'll only fit if you print the large hole versions of the head and bottom segments. First up, cut the hairband in half. Threading this through the various segments can be pretty tough, so I've trimmed back the outer shell of this headband a bit till I got to the rubber tip. That should help this fit a little more easily. We're going to go through one of the holes in the bottom segment, out through the bottom, and then right back in. Now we have this running through the bottom segment, We just need to slide on the middle segment and the collar. Make sure these parts are facing the right direction. You can generally tell by how nicely or poorly the parts match up. Now we're in for the really hard part. There's not much of the band left to work with, but we need to get both of these threads through the head segment. This is just going to take patience and a little bit of work. I find that I can use some tools to either push the thread through from one side or pull it on the other. But no matter what you do, it's still kind of fiddly. Now that all the segments are lined up, we just tie the hairband and shove the knot into this little hole in the top. There's so little space that a half knot should hold, but a square knot is even better if it will fit. Check that everything is sufficiently tight, and if it isn't, just retie the knot a little bit further down the hairband. This is a pretty good connection right here, so I'm happy with that. And I'm going to trim off some of the excess hairband. Quick side note to those that like puzzles. Can you figure out a way to assemble this using a single uncut rubber band? With some creative moves, it's possible to tie a hidden knot on both ends of the snowman. Alright, back to the assembly. The hat just glues right onto the head. For this, I recommend using hot glue. That way, if you need to switch out the band in a few years, you can get the hat off without completely destroying the print. And now we have an articulated Snowman Fidget toy. I hope you like this new model. As always, you can download the files for free and print your own copy. In addition to Thingiverse, I've started posting my projects onto Thangs and Prusa printers. So no matter which site you prefer, you can more easily make a copy of your own. Well, that's it for this week. So happy printing, and thanks for stopping by.